back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
I'm very unprepared, so it's going to be interesting to see if anybody actually notices the difference.
Let's start at the top, I guess. How did your leagues go this week? How were your results?
Can we move on to something else? No,
Enough said.
No, it wasn't that bad. I won 2, lost 2, but I was actually pretty gutted about the 2 that I lost. They were 2 that I needed to win in, and I was feeling pretty comfortable about halfway through, and events conspired against me. It's one of those things. I think one of those teams was the one that I fancied the most out of the teams that I drafted, and yet somehow it's languishing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
Mm.
I don't know how you feel about this weekend, but it's certainly a high-scoring weekend from Fantasy Rugby Draft perspective, but it felt like a little bit more normality, like good players scoring the points. There's a few odd random ones in there, but players who should have done what they were supposed to do or what we were expecting them to do, by and large, did what they were expected to do.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. I guess I'm wondering, there's been no scoring changes since last year, so it's just strange that we're just getting all these freakishly high scores.
No, absolutely it is, and you wonder if there's certain applications of rules or actual Super Rugby rules that have made this much more of an open, expansive game. I'm not too sure. When you
I thought the same thing. Is it a rule change in the actual game? It's hard to sort of put a finger on it, really.
It could be inviting the Sunwolves and Kings into the competition. Anyway, we're recording this on Monday, March the 21st. We're going to have a review of Game Week 4. Then we're going to go across the free agent desk and have a chat about some players that you might potentially want to pick up on the waiver wire, players that play quite well, that are owned in not many leagues. Then we'll also look at the top scores and the top managers and the top leagues for Game Week 4. Right, let's crack into the first match, which was the Hurricanes Force. Mossman, you were watching this with me, so what were your overall impressions of the Hurricanes' first time at home, I guess?
The front row is back.
Yeah.
I think we can safely say that.
Yeah, that's right. Big scorers, even without Reg Goods. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, Dane Cole's just back to being Dane Cole's, I guess. So an immediate impact, which was good to see.
A little bit worrying further out wide, though. I mean, I'd hate to jump on a negative straight away when there were so many good things in the Hurricanes, but Julian Savea?
Yeah. I mean, you said last week that this is just what he does early in the season, and I guess it's just a game longer perhaps than we think.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more worried I'm obviously a little bit more worried than I was last week. And we talked about your discussion around Adi Savea and Julian. I know a lot of people, even when I was making the comment a couple of weeks ago, was on the Artie side anyway, but I'm closer now, certainly after Artie's performance.
But I mean, let's quantify that. If you're saying that you're worried about Savea, what does that mean? If you were looking to trade for him, how low are you thinking now?
I'd probably take Ryan Kumbrink for him.
Would you?
That's probably more to do with me being outrageously high of Ryan Kumbrink, yeah.
Right, okay. Yep, that's pretty interesting. James Lowe?
Yeah, I'd take James Lowe.
Yeah, okay. Just thinking how long could I get? What about, you wouldn't take Warwick Land, would you?
Jeez, I'd have to think about it.
It's amazing though that you actually...
The reason I'd think about it, I mean, you look at that game in the weekend, it was a fairly dour game, and the Sharks, they defend well, and they turn it into a bit of a derby, but he's just a shining light.
Yeah.
He's just a step above everybody else on the field. Maybe Willie LaRue was right there with him, but Warwick Land is just so dangerous. Dangerous.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll come to him, but that's interesting. So we're talking about Savea potentially being somewhere near the outside of the top 10, I guess.
Yes, I think so. Yep, I think so. But it's only, I don't think you should trade him at the moment. But if you can get something and someone's still trading on the name, then great. But I don't know. It just worries me a little bit more. And I guess if you can't, you've got to hold him for this week because you're playing the Kings. Now, hopefully he is playing the Kings. Hopefully there's not too much of change in Chris Boyd's team, and I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute. But hopefully, if he doesn't fill his boots here, I guess you're going to have to cut your losses. You're obviously not going to get a Runkum. Or maybe you do, but you won't get that top 10 that you're expecting. Who else? I guess one of the players that a lot of people were a bit nervous around was Laumape.
Yeah, bounce back. I think. What was it? You said something about don't judge him until you see him at home. So I guess we saw enough for him to be fairly serviceable, I guess.
Yeah, he looked okay. He did, and he scored the try, which helps. But he'd been threatening to do that for a wee bit, and he does have a bit of a nose for the line, that old saying. But no, he looked a lot better. That team functioned obviously a lot better as well. The Force tried, but they made too many changes in that pack in the back line that they were never really going to put up an effort.
I guess if people are looking for takeaways, and I'd say Fafita is probably one. If you're looking for somebody who's a bit of a bolter, definitely somebody that's worth looking at. Yeah.
And against the Kings this weekend, because I imagine they'll probably carry on resting Brad Shields.
Yep.
Even if he is back to his fitness with his thumb.
No, I'd imagine sometime towards the end of this week we'll be talking about him, and he'll be in the conversation probably for the sort of the player to watch for the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. One player that I thought was okay, that I've been fairly hard on of late or the last couple of years, is Corey Jane. I thought he actually played okay.
Yep, he actually did have a decent game. Doesn't always translate into points, but he was very involved and just sort of looked quite energetic.
He did. I think everything you want to say about the Force can probably be summed up by where you find the first Force player in the player hub for this weekend. If you look you'd have to go to the third page to find your first Force player.
Wow.
Could you tell me who that might be?
Is it Rassalia?
No, close.
Oh, okay. Close as in he plays in a similar position?
Not far away. He's right,
Not far away.
Not far away at all, yeah. It's Marcel Breakey.
Okay.
Yeah. But for the rest of the Force, I mean, Grant was okay, but it didn't translate to fantasy rugby, and they were just, eventually the Hurricanes, the dam broke. The Massarewa experiment is probably over for now. I thought there might be a little bit more in this game for him, but the Force just didn't look like they had too much going forward.
No.
Anything more for you? Apart from that, so one point on the Hurricanes is that they are playing the Kings on Friday night, Easter Friday. I did read a note that Chris Boyd was thinking about some change. He said there is going to be some change, but I'm not entirely sure. It didn't sound like a complete overhaul, but there were talk in the midfield potentially of Proctor coming back and Willis Hullo coming in. I don't think it'll be for Laumape. I think it'll probably be for Vince Asso if I had to guess, but just something to be aware of when you're A, looking at free agent pickups for Tuesday, and B, looking for team news come Thursday. Right, Waratahs Highlanders. I don't know what to make of this game. This is crazy. Highlanders came out, I guess, from a fantasy perspective, Elliot Dixon was pretty good first up, right?
Yep, Elliot Dixon and Liam Squire were both pretty good.
No, very, very strong. I think it's hard to tell actually what happened in this game from a complete change at half time, and the Waratahs nearly came over the top and got them. But what do you think about Jed Holloway? First of all, his performance, was it tinny or was it good, or was it something constructive and could be repeatable?
I guess it was a little bit freakish in some ways. It was just, the whole thing was a little bit weird.
Yeah, no, it's fair, because I think on the one stretch that Gibson obviously wants Wycliffe Palu in there, but he just added something. Now, I'm not entirely sure if it was all down to him or a change of mindset or something, but he certainly added a lot of go forward and a lot of spark to that team that previously wasn't there in the first half. So, we will talk about this in the free agent desk as well, but I'm not too sure whether this is going to mean a starting role or not for Jed. But so for the Waratahs, the man who obviously grabbed all the headlines, and certainly from a fantasy rugby draft perspective, was Kurtley Beale. So he picked up a significant 40.1 points. He got a spark at halftime as well, didn't he?
This was another kind of weird one. I didn't think watching it that Beale was having a particularly great game. So I guess it just goes to show you how somebody can turn things around pretty quickly and make breaks. Up until that point, I was sort of watching him and thinking that he's not really the man to guide that team around the field. And that's probably still true, but I guess it's just one of those things that it doesn't necessarily translate into fantasy points sometimes.
And especially when you consider now's probably a pretty good time to trade him. If people aren't aware that Bernard Foley's coming back and have just seen him score 40 points, I think you're probably never going to get higher value for Kurtley Beale. Now, what you can get, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's true, but then again, a lot of people that I spoke to that drafted him did so thinking that he'd possibly get to fullback at some point anyway. So it's one of those things where a lot of it wasn't necessarily scored. Most of his points actually came from kicking, I think. It wasn't actually the case. Kind of in the same way that we've talked about Damian McKenzie, still being relevant even without the goal kicking. I guess the same thing applies here. Not that I'm saying it's repeatable, but there's probably not too many other midfielders that have the opportunity that he does to be a big scorer. Sure.
No, agreed.
Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking of guys that we still, we rate pretty highly, like, let's say, for instance, like Karevi. There's no way that Karevi's ever going to put up a 40-point game.
No, that's probably true. Certainly not at the moment anyway. Damien Delende, I'd say, has the ability to, and he doesn't do it with kicking. It would be a push, but I'd have to check last season, but I think he put up a lot of 35ers. Actually, on midfield, it's a good segue into Rob Thompson. He scored 18 points, looked okay. Most of that came in one run, or one setup. But I think he'll be okay. I think that's kind of his MO. He is going to bust one. And I think you've got enough people outside you that if you can get it to Osborne, Naholo and Smith, then you're fine. Okay. Anything more from this game?
Tongia, decent.
Yeah, that's true. We said that last week, didn't we? That if he's on the pitch, he scores points.
Yeah.
It's just whether, he's obviously, number 5 rank in that back three when you consider Fadders is starting at the moment.
Is there any word about Patrick Osborne's injury?
Oh, look, it didn't sound too serious at the time when it happened, but I haven't heard anything official.
Right.
Yeah, they play the Rebels this week, so I think that's another really good matchup for them. The Rebels actually are playing fairly decently, but I'm still not sure that their defence is as heralded as a lot of people think it is. The Bulls did a decent job on them a few weeks ago, and that seems to be forgotten. But, the Rebels are playing quite well. I think that'll be a decent match. I saw the Highlanders are training in Manly today, for whatever that's worth. So looking at the Sunwolves Rebels match, I guess the first name you've got to be pretty impressed with is Sean McMahon. He was really, really impressive in the loose and tackling. I saw a few trades that have gone around with Sean McMahon. Where do you put him in the ranks of loose forwards?
Well, it's 2 good games, so I'm not getting carried away.
Sure.
Because it's not, he doesn't, I guess, have the track record behind him. It's not like has he automatically turned into a superstar? Well, I mean, we see loads of people that string together a couple of good games, and you can't necessarily read too much into it.
Sunwolves and Reds too as well, but he was pretty Herculean. You'd have him over his loose forward trio though, Adam Thompson?
Yeah, that's an interesting one actually. But I kind of like the role that Adam Thompson's actually playing in this team. So I think there's potential there as well. So I wouldn't get that carried away.
Sure. A couple of players that we talked about last week that were free agents and had performed quite well for the Reds, with Jonah Placid and Tom English. Some
Yep.
good tries in there, some good incisive. There's a great backline move at one point with Placid and Tom English. For Tom English's try, I think it might have been.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I only saw the highlights of this game, but I felt like there was enough of them that it probably summed up everything. So it looked like, you say, a training ground move. It was looked like it was being run on a training ground almost, considering some of the defense that was going in there. So things just really did fall apart towards the end. The Rebels looked like the greatest team ever.
They did. Yeah, they looked really good.
And I'm going to suggest to you that they're not the greatest team ever. So, you've got to factor that opposition in, and it could be that we're seeing now the impact of these teams joining the competition.
Yeah, that's right. The 2-week pre-season showing its head a little bit.
Yeah, this was a home game against probably arguably one of the weaker opposition that the Sunwolves will play.
Yeah, that's right.
This does not bode well.
No, it doesn't. One player from the Sunwolves that he's put together a couple of decent performances now is Tatakawa. He scored 17 points. He looked okay. He seems to be the force in their backline. He's the one that makes the breaks. And he's done it a couple of weeks in a row now. So I think if you are scratching around, we'll discuss whether it's a good pickup or not in the free agent desk. But certainly last 2 weeks have been okay. I don't want to dwell on this game for too long because similar to the Force, the Sunwolves just did not have any. Yamada back down to ground again. Just not enough ball, and as you say, the Rebels really started to come over the top on them. Okay, anything more for you from this?
No, I think other than Tusi Pisi, you're stretching to have to pick up a Sunwolves player.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
How did the
No, I forgot to mention that actually. So the Rebels front row scored something like 6 points.
Okay, that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. I wondered if in a game where everything was going too. I wonder if in a more tight a tight contest that it might be better for the front row, but they just didn't need to. As you said, those training ground backline moves were just carving up, and Thompson and Sean McMahon were just cutting through them. Didn't really need to get that front row going.
Well, I think what we'll do then is we'll shelve that theory until next time someone puts up a big score against the Sunwolves, and then we'll drag it back out again and say,
Absolutely.
hey, see here.
Indeed, yeah, exactly.
Confirmation bias. It's good.
This is what we talked about in the 21st of March 2016. Okay, Crusaders Kings. Yeah, I guess from a gameplay perspective, this is kind of what we thought. I think the Crusaders are a bit upset that the Kings got as many points as they did, but it was from an intercept and they were a bit flat, the Crusaders coming off. Richie Mwanga, massive scorer, and he would have got a lot more as well had he not been subbed at 50 minutes for the Sharks game next week. Nemani Nandolo, again, he's just everywhere, that guy. He's pretty much, well, he's not the only now. We've got a few weapons in there, but his presence just can't be underrated. And one player that probably wasn't on too many people's radars was Jimmy Tupou, but he played well at 8. He provided a good assist for Nadolo's first try, and he's generally pretty good carting the ball around. Did you see much of this game, mate?
No, I just saw the highlights, and so I did see him feature prominently. And I guess this doesn't come as a huge surprise, but at the same time, we liked this kind of partly because of the opportunity playing at 8, and clearly moving forward, that's not going to happen.
No, it isn't. It's great if you could grab it just now, but for 2 reasons, you can't play the Kings every week, and you won't be at number 8 for every week as well.
Yep.
Johnny McNichol got a heck of a load of meters. His try was a little bit lucky. Intercept try, but you're going to get those against the Kings. But, it was a good game back for him. I think Black Todd is going to have an interesting time next week to try and pick his top team, which is I suspect what he'll do against the Sharks, or he has to do against the Sharks. So Mackay did score here when he came on, so it'll be interesting to see where he puts Johnny McNichol and Johnny Mackay. Matt Todd, not really up to speed coming back. He came off at half time for Tim Boys, but he will be better for that. I think it's just nursing his minutes. And obviously the Crusaders front row playing well. I don't think we needed to say that you play every front row against the Kings. I know we talked about our theory with the Sunwolves, but this isn't even a theory. This is actual, your front row is going to get points if you play against the Kings. I shudder to think what the Canes are going to do next week. Ryan Crotty got a little bit at the end. Made 2 or 3 tackles, I think, but that's probably about it. It does kind of illustrate the point that we were saying last week, that you just need to be a little bit careful about players coming back from injuries and how many minutes they might get off the bench. I know people were starting to make the decision whether they play these guys because you're playing against the Kings, and if you played Tim Boyes, who came on at 45, that's a good one. If you played Crotty, then not so much. But yeah, he'll be good for that as well in terms of coming back to play the Sharks next week, and I suspect he'll start. I don't know if you heard, did you get a chance to you said you heard the highlights of this?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So did you hear, and did the highlights package have Justin Marshall's highlight?
It didn't, but I actually did hear about this, and so I went to check it out.
Yeah, this is pretty good. It's on about the 48-minute mark if you want to listen to it back again. And it's when the Kings scored their second try, actually, I think it was. So Justin Marshall was explaining about the new bonus point rule, and that he thought the Kings had just scored the third try, but they'd actually only just scored the second, I think, or maybe it was the third. But anyway, the point was that he thought that the bonus point reset, so that the Crusaders had to score another 3 tries more than the Kings. And it came back to halfway, and Tony Johnson was like, and we're back to bonus point, back to within the Crusaders, still have the bonus point, 6 tries to 2, I think he said at that time. I think it was something like that. And Marshall was like, no, they don't. And TJ was like, yes, they do. And for about 2 minutes afterwards, TJ couldn't talk. He couldn't speak because he was laughing, and you could see that he was trying to get some sort of sense of normality back in the box, but every time he put his microphone back up to his mouth, you could just hear him giggling like a schoolgirl. It was one of the best Justin Marshall isms that I've heard for a long, long time.
He was going on and on about the try they scored, how it's crucial because this means they don't get a bonus point. And TJ was just like, no, more than 3 tries, they still do. It's 6 minus 2 is 4, Justin.
Yeah.
And there's silence, and Justin's going, yes, you're right.
That's correct.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And he lost that after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once they got a little bit back, I think Marshall's comment was like, shows you how much rugby I watch.
Yeah.
Anyway. For the Kings, people were asking about Chris Clotey and whether they should play him as well. And we generally said at this point, I generally said at this point, probably not, because you're playing the Crusaders, and that was going to be a tough matchup for them. But he actually looked pretty good. He was probably there next to the hooker. He was probably the one shining light that they had. And if he hadn't been binned, I think he might have picked up quite a few points as well. But their hooker, I'm not even trying to pronounce that I'm not going to. He looks really good, and I think he added a bit of spark. So I think it's one of those catch-22 scenarios where your front row is probably it has the potential to get a yellow card every match, but that guy is going to score tries. He's got so much energy, and he's done it a couple of weeks in a row now against pretty tough opposition. So I think you'll see it play out a bit more, but if you're really struggling for a front row, check to see if he's starting or not.
I think that's crazy. There's no way in hell you're starting those guys.
And is that because it's a yellow card waiting to happen?
Oh, I think they'll get crushed most weeks.
Okay.
Whereas he probably won't score a try most weeks. You've got to think about what's more likely to happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm. No, look, that's fair. They're number 6 at the moment, front row. And they've scored, let me just check, so 7 points and 15 points. So obviously they're not going to do what they did this week. But they were serviceable against the Chiefs and had a yellow card. And so they would have been 13-14, but Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of something there, but I'm actually more worried about the yellow card. If you see what the Brumbies front row did to you and lost lots of matchups, I'm more worried about them scoring negative than wanting them to score too many points, if you're really scratching around for one anyway. Okay, anything else from this match?
No. I think you pretty much, you fancy your players when they're playing against the Kings, we know that.
Yeah, that's right, it is. Okay, Reds Blues. Would you take in the line out, or would have you kicked the points?
I think you take the points.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a contrarian view, I think, to a lot of people. But I suspect if he had gone for the line out and scored a try, everyone. Well, maybe not. Who knows? But either way, he was going to get slapped or something by the Auckland public. Uncle Rico, how did he go?
So he was okay. Despite the scoreline, it was a reasonably open game, I guess. So
I think with him, he scored about 80% of his points in that one break that he made to set up the try. It was quite incredible. There was a bit of mixed bag in there, and I think if you look at the guy on the other side as well, Tavita Lee, he shelled a lot of passes. I don't know what was going on with the Blues. They just lost a little bit of. Not sure what it was. They came out of the gates fairly well, but then the Reds came back at them and probably unlucky not to get the win, I guess, the Blues ultimately. But yeah, Rieko Ioane, and I just don't know what to do with that Auckland Blues back three. Next week it'll be Milani Nanai and it'll be Duffy at fullback and it'll be someone else on the wing. I don't know, maybe Ranger will be back. I just don't know where to go. Have you got any semblance of what you're doing with any? Do you own any of these? You own Vicinea, right?
I do, yeah, and I'd continue to hold Vicinea. I still think that he's a guy that's going to get picked. Even if Tavita Lee would have let a lot of people down this weekend because people would have started to come around to the idea of him. He would have been sitting on a lot of people's bench up until this week.
Yep.
And then you put him in your lineup and he comes up with that. So, that's disappointing. But no, I'd still stick by Vicinea. That said, I could trade Vicinea, I guess, that's something I'd definitely consider, just because it would remove some of that uncertainty. So I think you might be able to get something fairly decent for him because from a fantasy point of view, he's quite a well-known player. Mm-hmm. Because he's been consistently good over the last couple of seasons. They'll look at his points output from this season. So that's actually pretty decent as well. So there might be a deal that you could get there. So for instance, last year I traded Willie Roo.
I call my disease.
I traded WLR and got Vicinea back in return. Right. And at the time, that was a really good trade.
Yep.
I was happy with that one. Now, if I could do the reverse this year, I'd actually be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, right. I tell you what, he's a hell of a liability on defence at the moment, Vicinea. He makes some really interesting decisions, not just heat of the moment decisions, but also just kind of formation style, where to stand on a particular scrum or a line out or set plays. Oddly concerning for someone who's the head coach of who's an outside back himself. I think that's the first thing you get in order. Jake McIntyre obviously listened to the podcast, getting 28 points.
Yeah, I'd say you've probably seen his highest score of the year, though. I
think you probably have as well. I tell you, he played quite well, is Etu Nabuli. He's getting a little bit more involved in everything. And he's someone that obviously the Reds know what they've got in him, and they're obviously trying to feed him the ball quite significantly. And it was good to see. 20 points is not massive, but for a number 3 outside back, I'd take that any day of the week.
No, for sure. Yep, he looked good. I thought the other guy that impressed me was Frisbee.
Yes.
So just looks like I think with having a young fly half outside him, he's kind of almost running the cutter a little bit, like really heavily involved, and just looks kind of more at ease, looks like an old hand, an experienced player. Whereas when they stuck him in last year at 10, he just looked completely out of his depth. This year, he looks like a different guy.
He did. No, absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, and picking up 19 points is, that's a great outing for a halfback.
But I think that this is something that could actually be quite repeatable for him.
No, absolutely.
Because he seems to have taken on this kind of leadership role, I think he might lead from the front by chancing his arm a little bit more, kind of getting involved. I'd say, I know he's probably right now, he probably is the number one halfback just in terms of points, but I don't think that that's sort of smoke and mirrors. I think there's probably not many halfbacks that I'd want ahead of him.
No, so you're totally right. He's ahead of TJ Perenara, 56 points to 41. If you had, I don't know if I'd swap. Maybe you've seen Perenara's worst games in the first couple of games. I'm not sure.
I'd still take Perenara.
Yeah, I think I probably would too. Yeah, but the premise still stands. He is in everything that the Reds do. I think that's good. Eli West was okay, 20 points. I think one. What was his name? Matt McGann, I think. There's a big uproar that he came on and milked that penalty. He took a bit of a dive. And I think there was the commentators didn't particularly like it. It didn't look pretty. They trotted out all the lines, that doesn't belong in rugby. That's a soccer thing. It's a football thing. All the cracking old sayings, get off my lawn type thing. But there was another player who did something not too dissimilar in the Brumbies match, and that was David Pocock, and I didn't hear too much from him, from Edzabeth. Every kind of quasi tackle, and Pocock went flying backwards like something that had been hit a lot larger by going backwards. It was just as much of a dive as far as I know that's a bit sacrilegious to say, but yeah, it was interesting to see Matt McGann's Vitarol sent his way anyway. Anything more from this match?
No,
I don't think
so. Akira Ioane scoring 8.5 odd points coming off the bench. I still think he does have value coming off the bench, but Tana, stop it already. Come on.
Yeah, that's right.
Just get him in there.
He does have value coming off the bench, and he didn't do a hell of a lot, but he got 8 points, right? So there is massive upside with him, and if the floor is going to be 8, then I'll take that every day.
That's right.
Because more often than not, he won't get that 8. He'll be up in the 20s. All right, Lions Cheetahs. How much of this did you see? Did you see much of this live?
No, but I saw a lot of highlights, and I think the highlights kind of told the story a little bit, especially about the Lions.
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of highlights in this. Ruan Combrink is just a beast. I think we talked about it last week, right? We said, remember when the Lions were at home and it was just Combrink and Mapo and Faf de Klerk just running down the middle of the field untouched, and wasn't too dissimilar here as well. And a lot of times, he's in everything, Combrink, and he even kicked a conversion for when Yankstees scored his try, and he took a bit of a knock. I've got a little bit of a man crush. Can you guess who that might be? One of the Lions players. We've talked about him before. A little bit of alliteration as well, but it's more to do with how much work he does around the paddock and how much of a physical specimen he is.
Warren Whiteley.
It's Karl Marx's brother, Malcolm.
Right. Okay.
No, he's an absolute beast. He's got pace, and he's always at the breakdown. One of the first, well, certainly the first tight forward there. And his ball carrying ability is just crazy. That Lions front row is just going to keep scoring points like they are with him in the team. It's just really, really good. Manisi, he was strong around the park. I don't know what your take on him is, but he's a big guy. He looks like he's always struggling for top pace, but he scores a lot of points and he makes breaks. It doesn't look like he really needs it.
No, I guess I'm a little bit ambivalent towards him. This was a game that, because it opened up so much, I guess it sort of suited him. He could easily disappear perhaps in a tighter contest. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it was disappointing to see Yako Creel get knocked out so early. I guess we have to check on his head knock status, but they've got the bye this week, so I think they were just being gently with him. Faf de Klerk was really good as well. scored his try. He always seems to be there in support, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yep. No, this is good around team.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I like the Lions.
I know. We probably got a bit of a Lions fan club going here because we talk about them quite a lot and say that we're fans. So there we go.
For the Cheetahs, so it turns out that D. Neal did start Murray, and he will actually score points when he starts. So if this is going to be continued and Zalinger is going to be shelved, then he's probably a good person to pick up, because he's one of those players that's got a little bit of selfish streak to him, and for fantasy rugby draft, that's gold dust. It's not ideal in a proper rugby situation or scenario, but for fantasy rugby, he wants to break that line. So Zalinger actually came on for William Small Smith, and they were chopping and changing a lot with Murray about who was playing first receiver or who was playing in the midfield, and even a little bit at fullback with Blumenkeys coming into the line as well. If you had to pick Sergel Pietersen or Raymond Rule, if you had to pick one, who do you think you'd go with now?
I think I'd go Pietersen.
Yeah, so would I. He scored a very good try. And I think the difference with Sergel Pietersen is that they're saying basketball as well. He can create his own shot. He's the same. He can make something out of nothing, whereas Raymond Rule kind of needs the team to be playing well, and it's a function of the team as his kind of scoring. He doesn't necessarily, unless it's an intercept try. It's not like he doesn't have that power or the jinkiness of Sergel Pietersen, so I'd probably go the same way as well. Anything more from this match from a fantasy rugby draft perspective?
Good to see Yankees running a little bit. Maybe being a little bit selfish himself. It's not, like you said, not a bad thing.
Yeah, indeed. No, that was good. Good overall performance from the Lions. Now they got a week off. I tell you, actually, the Sun played okay when he came on. Johan Ackerman's son. Rowan Ackerman, I think it might be. But
it's
2 tries in a row now. Something to be... I know a couple of managers have picked him up. I'm just looking at his ownership percentage is still really, really low, but it's 2 weeks in a row. Just tough, as I was talking about. And Jimmy Tupou, though, it's tough to do it from the bench and repeat that from the bench, let alone lock scoring a try at all. Okay, Stormers Brumbies. I guess the main talking point is around the TMO and how much he was smoking.
Oh, that was just crazy, wasn't it? Yeah, like just the shot of Dylan Lades just laughing, I think summed it up perfectly. So
he actually, when he put the ball down, or when he knocked the ball down, when he got up, he said to the ref, he was like, "Nah, don't go upstairs." And the ref was like, "No, I'm just the AR came in and said you better check this." And Dylan came up and said, no, actually I don't want you to check that at all. No, I've knocked that. And the AR was like, just going to check it. Sure enough, he checked it, and I'm still not entirely sure how they came to the conclusion that, I don't know how they did that.
Well, how did they do that? I mean, this is just ridiculous. Like, what could he possibly be watching?
No,
was he watching it in real time and it looked different? I mean, I can't fathom it.
Yeah. I think, I'm not actually sure this was the worst TMO decision in this match. So, did you see the red card and how they came about? They got the right decision. He should have been red carded. He punched him 2 or 3 times. Bad technique. Most of them probably missed, but I think he did connect. And it should be a red card. Punching someone is a red card. But the Piper went to the TMO, and they were backwards and forwards having this conversation that doesn't look like they were speaking in the same language again. And Piper wanted to just check something because he was going for a yellow card, and he said, I'm only going to yellow card if it was a punch. If there was an elbow and it connected, if the elbow connects, then I'm going to give a red card. And I was just saying, well, no, that's not the rules. That's just not the rules. He's throwing a punch, it's a red card too. And it took him a while, and once the TMO actually came in there and said, oh no, he didn't connect, but he has thrown a punch. And it was actually Juan de Jong, I think, that was just standing there saying, he's thrown 4 punches. That's a red card. And the ref was like, Oh, he might have something to... Yeah, that might actually be true. I've heard that somewhere. And he went upstairs, checked it, and sure enough, he did it. So if we all talk about how, don't harass the ref, and, captains shouldn't be going at them saying this, that, and everything, and refs are, they don't hear what the captains say. This is evidence to say he actually did get him sent off, but it was correct. It's just an outrageous decision.
Yeah, I wonder whether De Jong should get like a red card assist or something. Is there points for that?
You should get +7 or something, half a red card back on your side. Yeah. No, look, strange match, but overall, I think the Stormers kind of ground them down, really, is probably is the best thing you can say. Really good defence, held the ball quite well. The Brumbies just looked a little bit unsettled, and their travel kind of came a little bit unstuck, and that red card probably put paid to any kind of comeback they thought was going to happen. There's not a hell of a lot of folks that are troubling the scorers in this match, unless you look at the Brumbies front row, and that's not a good troubling of a scorer. But Joe Pietersen, again, I mean, he terrorised them in that semi-final last year. Yeah, he did the same thing again. I just seem to maybe fear the hair or something like that. I'm not too sure what it is. And Dylan Lades did okay, scoring, let's say he scored that try. He scored 18 points, but I think there is still a significant problem with that midfield. And when Leo Zass came on, Kobus did go into 13 for Johnny Kotzer, but there's just a starving of possession to any one of those outside backs in it. And it shows with Cheldon Colby, all he's ever going to get is run back meters. There's nothing from a set move in that back line.
So, Joe Tamani or Julian Savea?
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because that's who I traded with in the podcast league 2 weeks ago. I gave up Tamani to get Savea.
Regretting it much?
No,
of course not.
No, definitely not.
Because it wasn't just those players, right?
No, it was. It was just those two. Yep. So I'm not regretting it in so much that Joe, last year started really well. He's kind of the opposite of Savea in that he didn't particularly finish well. There was a few good games in there, but it was getting to the point where you couldn't quite figure out which were the good games for him. And that was at the point where Savea was coming over the top. So I was playing the long game and hoping that, in those kind of weeks 13 through, if I make the playoffs, that's when Savea is going to come to fruition, and Joe Tamani isn't necessarily as reliable towards the end of the season after he's taken all of his knocks. So just back onto Leo Zass, I think it'll be an interesting team selection this week. They play the Jaguares, and that seems to have points in it. So if they do decide to go and bring in Kobus van Wyk in 1 to 13 and start Leo, then that's obviously a big upside. But I still think that they really are missing Damien Delende in there. And they're not necessarily missing him so much, but the combination of him and Juan de Jong and the fact that de Jong has to go in one means that the outside backs aren't getting as much of a play as they should. Okay, on to your beloved Jaguares playing the Chiefs. Crazy match.
No, it's an awesome match.
Yeah, it was great. How did your brunch get on Sunday in the end?
I watched this on replay, as it turned out. So
yes, very good.
Yeah.
No, it was a cracking match. One note that I've got here around Boffelli. So he looked dreadful. And I know that Montero, a lot of players are asking, a lot of managers have asked around Montero, when's he going to be back? And I understand he was fit this week, and this is the first week that he was fit. So I suspect that he'll push a pretty solid case forward to start on that left wing ahead of Boffelli in the next match. But just an observation I thought as well. But Damien McKenzie let you down with 1,000 points this week.
The smile's getting bigger. The one at the end then was like, it wasn't a smile. He's actually chuckling to himself.
He was.
It was ridiculous. It was almost, I think at one point the cameras stopped focusing on him too, because they just thought, yeah, this is just getting a bit stupid. So they went for the wide angle instead of just focusing on him.
I know, it's amusing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you? So, well, you would have seen this. So an interesting little bit in Cruden started out kicking and then got the shanks.
Mm-hmm.
And Damien McKenzie picked up the job again and was kicking beautifully. And that sideline conversion at the end was impressive.
Yeah, they swapped over at half time, basically.
They did. Now, what do you make of this going forward?
I just think it's just Cruden trying to get back in the flow of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you think the Chiefs are going to allow Cruden to miss 3 every game and give it to McKenzie?
No, but I just think that he probably hasn't been kicking in game situations, I guess. So, yeah. I mean, you tell me.
Look, either way, he still scored 24 points, right? So, I mean, he's going to be an integral part. We've said it before that he gets enough points to be a significant player at fly half, even if he isn't kicking goals. And it's consistent as well. He's fairly, now that he's back to what appears to be full fitness, maybe not, as you said, necessarily match fitness and match flow, being able to take the kicks and get the timing right there. But certainly 24 points from someone who, didn't score very many kicks at goal to start with is not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you sort of got to look at perhaps the bigger picture. I think as a goal kicker, I don't think that perhaps McKenzie's, say, overall percentage is probably significantly better than Cruden's. It may not be at all. I mean, we just we don't really know, do we? So, it's just a case of this guy's kicking it better at the moment, and that's just the way we'll go. But there's nothing to say that can't turn around.
No, I think this season, though, Cruden's percent will be a lot lower than McKenzie's at the moment.
At the moment, sure.
That
yeah, but it's small sample size, I guess.
It's true, they are small. It's true. Very short. I saw a tweet that Cruden is the nailed-on fly half for the All Blacks, so on. Is that just someone trying to clickbait?
No, I think it, yeah, I mean, I think Leadman Sapawanga will have something to say about that. But I did hear Kieran Reid being interviewed on the radio, and he was talking about the All Black leadership group, guys that, needed to step up this season, and he specifically mentioned Aaron Cruden as being one of those guys.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say nailed on, but I think he's probably got the jersey to start with.
Yeah.
If you look what Sapawanga's doing, though, and there's not many chinks in the armour at the moment with him.
No, there isn't.
Another one of your favourites who came on for 2 minutes and scored 1,000 points, Brad Weber.
Yep.
How do you do with him?
Well, yeah, this is the old conundrum with Chiefs halfbacks, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, no, he's, I guess the ends of game where things get a bit frayed kind of suit him, really. Tired forwards and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And so they've got the Force next week. And if you put Jemison Gibson Park's points together with TJ Perenara's points, you get 33 odd points in there for a halfback playing against the Force. So if he gets those points, and it was pretty cynical from Kerbale, deserved yellow card, but it'd be interesting to see who starts next week, because he did provide that extra bit of spark to get the Jaguars over it.
No, I agree. And I think it's, we talked about picking games, and I guess the gut feeling is that the Force game could be a Weber game, if that makes any sense. And I'm sure he'd certainly fancy himself up against Albie Mathewson too, if he ever got a chance to take him on the outside.
That's true. That's a good point. Player that played particularly well was Anton Leonard-Brown. He looked really good at 13. Good enough for me anyway to have a genuine competition for that spot outside Charlie Ngatai.
Yep.
22 points as well. Is a good return in fantasy rugby as well as on the field. Would you, if you had both of those and you needed to make room this weekend, which one would you prefer to have?
I'd still hold Tamanavalu.
You'd still have him over Anton?
Yeah, and I think he came on towards the end and had an impact too. So,
yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the way to go. Good to see Sanchez and Cordero getting a little bit more of a run. I'm not entirely sure. Cordero got a bit of a nosebleed when he was running down the middle of the field and kicked the ball away when he was 2-on-2, that I'm pretty sure he could have stepped or at least committed a man a little bit further. But
no, definitely he's a good player and he'll score plenty of points. I guess someone who didn't score a large number of points, but I thought looked good enough to sort of bode well for the future was Tugalet. I thought he'll probably still go okay. I don't think he scored a lot of points in this game. I haven't actually seen how many he scored, but my gut feeling tells me it probably wasn't a lot, but there were signs there which I thought were encouraging.
I totally agree. He did look pretty good, and he wanted to run back. So, okay, here's a question for you, because we've seen how the Jaguares play, and it's helter-skelter, and they don't leave too many questions being unanswered. They press from everywhere, but they're going to get turned over every now and again because they try this underneath their posts, and they're not much for the 101s or the way that you should play rugby, shall we say? Out of your territory. They're much more possession-based team, and if they get turnovers against them, they see how quickly the Chiefs made them pay. Basically, would you have? That was a long-winded way about asking you whether you would have Landajo or whether you would play Frisbee.
Can you repeat that question? No, okay.
Touché.
I think I'd stick with Frisbee.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I see Landajo just like Frisbee, but he's in a lot of things, and he's prone to a quick tap, and he's obviously been given a license, or a lot of those Jaguares has been given a license just to keep the possession going and keep that tempo up. And I think he seems to be the one that's take those quick taps. Okay. Jaguars front row looked okay. Sonny Bill Creevy doing okay, doing the offloads, but their prop was doing quite well as well. A couple of props there.
Yeah, that's right. Until he got knocked out by Sam Cane. But that was a little bit unfortunate, I thought. Maybe I'm wearing my Mulu eye patch, but I thought it was one of those situations where I don't think he's targeting the head necessarily. He's kind of got into an awkward position. You would see that kind of a clean out, I think, in a lot of rucks, but they don't have the effect because of where the contact point is.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that, it just led with the shoulder, and it wasn't. I know clean outs happen, but something that you've run in that far is always going to be a little bit harshly treated by it. And Lord knows the announcer at the ground tried to get him binned.
Well, that was kind of where I was heading with this. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying it didn't deserve some sort of sanction, but it was once again one of these things where it was perhaps the man in the TV booth that's sort of refereeing the game.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about it. I think we talked about this last year, and we've talked about stop saying talked about. I sound like Troy Aikman and who's the other guy? And
Buck.
Buck. Yeah, that's right. He always talked about talking about. But anyway, we discussed this concept that the NRL have picked up, which is the bunker, because they have these TMOs that don't necessarily have the same level across all of the TMOs in terms of the expertise and the skills. And the NFL do it pretty well. They've got it all, mic'd up that goes into New York, and they've got this big one booth or centre that everyone just goes to. And I think that Sanzar needs to go that way as well, just to take the vagaries out. And for me, it just needs the same person or the same few people making the decisions, because as soon as you start getting other people involved and too many people involved and too many different TMOs and based on different grounds, and you start to get a little bit of this conversation about home ground advantage of TMOs as well.
You just look for some consistency.
Yeah, that's right.
It was funny though, I was at the Warriors game yesterday afternoon as it happened, but the thing that makes me laugh about the bunker is that every time they go to the bunker, they have to show a shot of the bunker. Just to show you, no, we actually do have a bunker here. Here it is. Here's a shot of the screen. It's like, you don't need to show it. In fact, all you're doing is you're having a little box there with that in it, and you're obscuring the wider shot. It's just like, stop showing that and just show me what's happening. I don't care. I believe you when you tell me that there's guys sitting in a room somewhere. I'm cool with it.
A couple of guys on Facebook, Twitter, just put screens up.
Yeah.
Okay, anything more from Jaguares Chiefs?
Actually, it could be one of those things where they show a shot of the bunker and a cat walks past and then 30 seconds later, the same cap.
Yeah, I was
Same
going
position.
to say the same thing. It's like robbing a museum in a movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Putting it on loop.
Yeah.
Get the diamonds. The last thing to say about this match, I think, is probably looking at the pitch. I'm not sure whether they knew this was being played this weekend, but the pitch was in a pretty bad state. Both front rows had problems cutting up, but after 20 minutes, the pitch just looked like it had been grubbed. It was just coming loose all over the show. Okay. I've left this to last because I've called this the match of the day game. Would you concur? Bulls Sharks?
I didn't think Bulls Sharks was that bad.
Really?
Actually.
Who would you put over it? Considering some of the ones you just watched on highlights, I guess, but difficult conversation.
Good point. You've got me there. I think perhaps it was because I watched it fast forwarding through the breaks.
Oh, right, sure.
So it probably didn't seem as painful as perhaps it would have if you'd watched it in real time.
Yeah, I just thought this was not very entertaining. It was pretty wet as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was just teams that didn't particularly want to play with the ball under those conditions, and it made it very difficult for other players around them. But we touched on it before. Warwick Hallant just looks. This was a tough game for him against the Sharks under the wet. Looked really good.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
He is.
And when we talked about him scoring points last week without chancing his arm, well, he actually did chance his arm a bit here. And he scored his points almost in a different way.
Yeah.
But he takes the ball to the line and he's got quick feet, but we talked about, is he the new Cheslin Colby? Well, he's a lot better, I think.
He is. He's much better.
Yeah, because he's actually got the power to get through some of those gaps that he opens up with the quick feet. And just seems to have, he's got a lot of confidence, just seems quite calm, makes good decisions, good kicking game. I mean, he just seems to have a bit of everything, really.
He looks like he's having fun. It looks like everyone else, it's a grind, you know. But he's out there with a bit of a smile on his face. He's like, oh, I tried. Didn't work that time, but hey.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, so a lot of players were interested to see how Yamba Yalingo went as well. And he was okay. Didn't get much of an opportunity. None of the wingers really got a hell of a lot of opportunity. Just didn't go that way.
No, he kind of struck me as being, I guess he was sort of bigger and perhaps not as nimble as what I had expected.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? He just seemed kind of, when you take it to the line, that he was trying to was all power perhaps and not a lot of subtlety.
Yeah, I was expecting a bit of power with him. I'd seen a little bit of him before. He's not going to be bumped off like Basong. He's got a bit to him. He also looks a little bit like Wolverine, doesn't he? I guess that's what he's going with. That haircut that he's got and the chops that he's got. So
yeah.
He must be a big fan. Basong, pretty much what we're expecting, right?
Yeah, this is vintage Basong, isn't it?
It is.
To go from a 40-odd point game to a negative. I mean, that couldn't sum things up any better, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I assume he's going to score 6 tries next week against the Sunwolves, right?
Yeah, you can bank on it. Yeah.
I mean, we probably will have that conversation on Thursday, so start thinking what the hell you do about it.
Yeah.
What else from this game? So Willie LaRue I actually thought played quite well as well. At one point I was thinking, I had my Springbok selector cap on, and I was just like, well, I don't know how you can go past Hallant at the moment. But then Willie LaRue did play quite well in the second half.
Yep. I liked what I saw from him too. I guess it's just a continuation perhaps of some of the form that we've seen from him this year. So he's solid. I prefer Hallant. And I think some of that is maybe because of the pool that he's in as well. He's going to come up against the Sunwolves a couple of times this season.
That's right.
And I think he will enjoy that.
They're not the Haguarus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we have to touch on it. I texted you and said we've seen it. We've seen the worst. Do you think that was the worst kick from Joe Pie? I guess technically it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Mwanga's probably was the worst from a
That's right.
technical perspective, but from oh my God.
No, completely.
You can't miss that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was and it was a strange one because when we talked about it, I went back and watched it over and over again a couple of times to see exactly what had happened, and it looked like he'd pushed it right, but when the ball sailed into the crowd, it landed to the left, and I was just trying to figure out how it happened. It was bizarre.
I think they need to check this. Go to the bunker. Did he actually miss this? Because I watched it a few times as well, and I was like, has he missed that? It looks like to me he's gone through. Yeah.
The physics of it didn't seem possible that he could have missed.
No, that's right.
But and watching it again, it looked like the impact was somewhere up around the ankle. Like it was just a strange kick.
Oh, look, it was absolute madness at the end, though. That I think it was it Pete Van Sale or was the halfback? Maybe I've got that wrong, but he needed just to kick that ball out. Yeah, it was their exit strategy. They took it down. They had it at the back of the ruck. He actually cleared someone out of the way, and then he gave it to one of his runners, the second runner, who wasn't particularly prepared. I think it was Arno Bota, got turned over. Marcel Coetzee ripped it, and then chaos and bedlam assumed when the Sharks players all jumped up and down. And you kind of hate to see it when they miss something like that, but it was just comedy. It was just absolute comedy. The looks on their face at the end. And the Bulls' faces were just like, how the hell did that happen? Jesse Creel coming back, I think. So together, I read an article from Sumo Stevenson today that Warwick Ant was really strong, and probably the flip side of that, the yin to the yang, was Birger Odendale and Janse Fontaine ran for 1.5 meters combined, or something like that. Something really ridiculously low. And that's probably a lot to do with the outside backs. But the Sharks shut them down as well. But yeah, Jesse Creel coming back was good. Didn't get much of a chance to show a hell of a lot here. But these Sharks games, they'll grind you down. I think we need to be aware a little bit of playing against the Sharks. Certainly in South Africa or any of they seem to hang around and just, I'm not too sure. Not many fantasy points in this. I think if you have a look at Hellant was the first one, and he was on the second page of the scorers this week as well. Okay, anything more from this match?
Just that I thought Philip van der Walt actually looked okay.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he looked.
I don't know if that translated to fantasy points at all because I didn't see the scores, but just with the eye test, I thought he looked alright.
He scored 8. To me, it looked a lot better than that. There was one there he did with Willie LaRue, and I think it was Willie LaRue that made the break, or Joe Pietersen, can't remember which one it was, but yeah, and he was on the end off. But no, he was running quite wide, quite loose in a lot of this game.
It was a strong 8 points.
It's 8.2.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move across to the free agent desk. So just to premise how this works and what we're trying to do here is the waiver wire runs on a Tuesday night. What we're trying to do is identify some players that are potentially unowned or are on the waiver wire in your league. So we look at ownership percentage of less than 50%. And how they've scored and whether you should pick them up in your league. So I guess top of the list is someone that everyone's going to see at the top of their free agent list is Jed Holloway, because he's only owned in 17% of leagues. But what to do with Jed? At the moment, he hasn't got the starting position over Wycliffe Palu. We don't know if he's going to get the starting position over Palu. Would you be recommending him pick him up at this point?
No, I don't think so. Because you're not going to roster a lock, on the bench and just have him sit around. And I don't know if you'd read too much into this performance. I don't think that he's going to be rushed into the starting lineup based on what we saw there. It wasn't. My gut feeling is it just wasn't all about what he did. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't.
No, I agree with that. I think you've got a lot of better options. Who are starting players at least, and maybe worth a flyer if he's available a little bit later in the league. But I think at this point in the season, we've found that bench spots are really tight, and carrying that extra lock. Now, look, he may actually start in the week, and it may work out quite well for you. But what have you dropped, or who have you cut to make way for that? And I suspect it might be someone that has value later on.
I mean, if you get to the end of the week and he's still there, for instance, because, for whatever reason people haven't picked up locks, and you're rolling with, and he starts and you're rolling with somebody else, maybe say someone like Steve Maffey, who was one of the top locks coming in but is not starting, you're probably better off jumping ship at that point.
I probably, even if the team's not named and it's after the waiver wire, and I don't have one of those top tier locks, I'm probably going to go with him anyway and just chance my arm, and then I can fix it up on Friday if I need to and he's not named.
I mean, so many of them I think let you down this weekend anyway. Kirsten came up with nothing. Tuipulotu came up with nothing. So it was a bit of a wasteland there.
Yeah, I just think if he's not named in the team, that you can find a player similar to the one that you've cut. Someone like a Caden Neville or Luke Jones or something like that.
Yep.
Let me see if you agree with me here. Elliot Dixon is owned in 39% of leagues. That needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's two really strong performances from him. It's interesting. So Elliot Dixon 39%. Liam Squire's only owned in 13% of leagues.
So I think they're both every week starters.
So do I.
Yeah,
I do too. Even if they're named together and you've got two Highlanders loose forwards playing in there.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
No, I wouldn't. Some people try and limit their exposure, but if you rank them, as every week starters, then why shouldn't you? Tom English, he's 40% owned. I suspect that'll go up again. Etu Nabuli's 30% owned. Joe Pietersen's only 25% owned as well. Bryn Hall is 39% owned. Now they've got the bye, so you may need to manage that. Those that picked up Cobus Reinhardt when he wasn't playing to play this week against the Crusaders, similar thing with this week with Bryn Hall. You're going to have to find, those bench spots are really tough to come by. And the other one that I've got here is D. Moraes. Neil Moraes. He's only 36% owned. And I haven't been recommending him up to this point, but if he is going to start, and it looks the last two games has been him starting over Zelinga, then he will score your points. So I think you could go a lot worse than him being a backup fly half. And in certain situations, I think you are going to start him. There's other players on this list. I just want to run through them quickly, whether you would recommend Jake McIntyre.
I think he's as a backup, yeah.
Yeah, he's only 6% owned. Willis Halaholo. Worth rolling the dice, I think.
I like him, yeah. I quite liked him coming into the season. It was sort of a bit disappointing to see him not feature. So I guess it's difficult, because to roster or stash away someone like that when these bench spots are so hard to come by. But yeah, I kind of think it'd be worth it,
Yeah, I think if you were holding on to someone like we talked about the locks, I would pick up Willis Halaholo and not carry a lock until Friday. If I had someone like we talked about the locks, the mid-level locks, not the top ones, but the mid-level ones, I'd take a roll of the dice on him.
Yeah, that's probably a smart option. You could do the same thing perhaps if you had a front row
that's right.
just not performing for you, just swap one of them for Halaholo and then just see what happens later in the week.
Yeah, indeed. Howard Manisi, he's only 19% owns, a bit more of a smoky, and it's difficult when you've got to buy. You might want to look at rostering him potentially on Friday, depending on how your league plays out and if the team news comes through that you're expecting. One player I've got here is I've got Jamison Gibson Park. I think those owners of TJ Perenara should try and find room for him just for this week, because we talked about it when we discussed the Hurricanes match. I just wonder how much of a change there's going to be playing against the Kings this week. Do you get any sense, or would you do that if you were a TJ Perenara owner? Are you a TJ Perenara owner?
I am, yeah. It's when you were discussing earlier about potential players being rested, TJ Perenara was actually one that kind of came to mind. So it might not be a bad option. I mean, let's say last week you picked up a halfback and you probably got somebody else on the bench, then yeah, I think it's probably worth swapping. just to get that cover, because chances are there probably isn't anybody else that's out there that's better.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you just need to manage your, like I'd probably do it for someone like an underperforming loose forward as well, like Schalkberger or something like that. I'd be prepared to roll the dice, because that could be potentially there's a lot of points in that match. We saw Drummond perform quite well and score a few points, and he was coming off a bench. So it's a bit of a smoky, bit of an outsider one, but I thought there might be value in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Laumape, he's actually still only owned in 32% of leagues. I think he's another one that probably should be owned. Players that I wouldn't really necessarily recommend is Pete Samu. Looked good, scored a lot of points, but I'm not sure he's going to get that start, and I'm very loath to suggest bringing someone off the bench and starting him in your fantasy lineup if he's not starting. Is there any more that you've got on this list?
No. I mean, the team announcements are going to be interesting, because if, let's say that Hurricanes sort of went quite hard out in terms of their resting, there could be a chance for someone like Jason Woodward to come in and have some value. We've seen that before, just as a 1 week kind of a starter.
Another player I think you probably should look at, and it's in the same vein, is I read the article today, and Chris Boyd was talking about resting some players and not too much rotation. Quite what that means, I don't know, but he said that Matt Proctor was fit. So if he's in your league and he's unowned, I think you could do worse than putting him in. And they didn't necessarily say, they left the option open that it could be an outside back as well. So potentially maybe a Corey Jane, give him a bit of a rest or two. Or heavens above, maybe even Julian Savea, don't know. Okay, so let's get into the top scores, the managers in the league. So the top score this week is from Mike Haig with a massive 268.2. And I understand that looking at his team that it could have been a lot worse as well, with Richie Mo'unga being subbed off so early, but he's obviously long in Kurtley Beale and long in Crusaders.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm gonna hear all about this probably anyway. So
yeah, I understand he's in one of your leagues.
That's correct.
Top managers this week: Wesley Mundell. Congratulations, sir. Mike Haig, the aforementioned Mike Haig, number 2. Andre Heineke and Franco Dupli, and Ori Sharan round out the 5. So congratulations, Wesley. I believe that's first time on the top of the list. Kudos to you. And the top leagues. Again, Fence Pants, number 1. Congratulations, lads, holding that spot now a couple of weeks in a row. Number 2 is the Highveld Bowl. Number 3 is the Shiva Bowl. Number 4 is Dave's Dickheads. And rounding out the 5 is the Sharpie Cup. So that's some good work from the Fence Pants, backing it up again.
Yeah, there's some of the usual suspects in there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's starting to even each other out. When I do these calculations on a Monday, it's really interesting to see the same names not too far away from each other.
So I guess, because this question will no doubt be asked of me, is that 260 odd for Mr. Michael Haig, is that the highest ever score that we've had recorded in a week? Yeah,
I don't know is the short answer. I think it's the highest I can remember.
I don't recall hearing one like that.
I don't recall anyone getting anywhere close to that.
No.
That's massive. Yeah, you are going to hear a lot about that.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
A shame. Yeah. That's a shame. All right, a little bit of admin. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rag Draft. That's Fantasy AUG Draft, or on Facebook at Fantasy Rugby Draft. Or if you drop any mails for Thursday podcast, if you've got some trade tirades that come through, we've already had a few come through that have been pretty good. So email them through on support, or put it on Twitter as well. Mossman's on at Nathan Mossman. Keep the reviews coming in, but the iTunes reviews, but that's about the time we have today. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Is that the same cat?
El Tio Rapido.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a dummy!